Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads, unsure of what the future holds but knowing one thing for certain: the past can no longer define who you are? Meet Ethan. Once a successful architect chasing fame, he's now standing at the edge of a new life, one built on passion, purpose, and a vision to change the world. But behind him lies a past filled with betrayal, broken relationships, and the shadows of old ambitions. With a revolutionary new project underway, Ethan is ready to redefine everything: his career, his legacy, and even his relationships. But when old enemies resurface, the choices he makes could either elevate him, or tear down everything he's worked for. Will Ethan be able to rise above his past mistakes and seize the opportunity of a lifetime? Or will the ghosts of his former life drag him back into a world he's fought so hard to leave behind? Join us on an unforgettable journey of redemption, love, and the pursuit of something far greater than success. This is a story about finding the courage to rebuild, to fight for what truly matters, and to embrace the unknown. Welcome to Ethan's story. Are you ready to witness the journey? It was a crisp evening in New York when Ethan Clark and Sophia Williams entered the grand ballroom at the annual gala of Clark Enterprises. The room buzzed with chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the subtle hum of rich, powerful people. As the CEO of Clark Enterprises, Ethan had become a well-respected figure in the industry, with his business acumen and charm winning him the admiration of both colleagues and competitors alike. Sophia, his wife, stood by his side, graceful and composed, but her eyes betraying a hint of nervousness. Though their marriage had lasted for over 5 years, something in the air tonight felt different. Whispers floated around the room, and Ethan couldn't ignore the glances exchanged between Sophia and Victor Blackwood, the company's rising star and Ethan's protégé. Victor, a brilliant but secretive architect, had always been close to Sophia, and the rumor mill suggested more than just professional ties. Their shared smiles and stolen glances raised suspicion. The evening took a turn when Ethan overheard a conversation between two senior executives near the bar. Their words were veiled but clear enough to ignite the fire of doubt. Victor and Sophia, a secret, huh? The whole company knows about it. They've been seeing each other for months. Ethan's heart dropped. He didn't want to believe it. But later, when he found Sophia and Victor on the balcony, alone in the cool night air, the truth came crashing down. Ethan confronted them, his voice cold with disbelief. Victor, ever the charming figure, tried to defend his actions. But it was Sophia who admitted, her eyes heavy with regret, that they had been in an affair for nearly 6 months. The revelation shattered Ethan. His mind reeled as he retreated into his office, the weight of the betrayal suffocating him. Everything in his life seemed to unravel at once: his marriage, his career, his identity. For days, Ethan couldn't focus on anything. His projects at work suffered, and his relationships with colleagues grew tense. He found himself questioning his worth, wondering how he had failed. He couldn't help but wonder if his success had blinded him to the cracks in his personal life. At night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, grappling with anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of defeat. Who was he now? A man who had lost both his love and his career, all for someone else's gain. Just when Ethan thought he couldn't go on, an unexpected encounter shifted his perspective. He bumped into Isabella, an old friend from university, at a small cafe in Brooklyn. Isabella was a free spirit, living a life far from the corporate grind that Ethan had become ensnared in. She was an artist, a traveler, and above all, someone who seemed to be at peace with herself. Their conversation began casually but soon became deeper as they reminisced about their university days and the dreams they had once shared. Isabella reminded Ethan of the person he used to be: passionate, creative, and driven by a desire to make a difference. She encouraged him to start fresh, to reconnect with the passions he'd buried beneath layers of corporate life. Ethan began attending yoga classes and meditation sessions with Isabella, each step helping him regain his center. He also enrolled in creative writing courses and pursued painting, 2 hobbies he'd long abandoned. With Isabella's support, he started to reconnect with the world outside of work, and for the first time in years, he felt a spark of inspiration. But that wasn't all. Ethan began taking an interest in community development, something he'd always admired from a distance. He started to plan an initiative that would empower local youth to engage in creative entrepreneurship. The idea felt exhilarating, and as he worked with Isabella and a small group of like-minded individuals, he realized that he wasn't just building a project, he was building himself. Despite his personal turmoil, Ethan never fully abandoned his professional instincts. While he was rediscovering his artistic side, he also used his business expertise to craft a new plan for confronting the company that had once been his life. Using an alias, he began collecting information on Victor's shady dealings within Clark Enterprises. He wasn't just going to let Victor continue to thrive without facing the consequences of his actions. He partnered with a private investigator and started compiling evidence of fraud and corporate misconduct, uncovering a web of deceit that reached beyond just his marriage. The breakthrough came when Clark Enterprises hosted an international conference in Tokyo, where Ethan was invited to speak as a guest panelist. Ethan saw this as his chance for retribution. Armed with the truth about Victor's corruption, he set the stage for an unveiling that would turn the tables. During the conference, Ethan made an unexpected move. Instead of presenting his planned business speech, he spoke about integrity, personal growth, and the importance of ethical leadership. He subtly hinted at the corruption within the company, without naming names, but his words carried a weight that sent ripples through the audience. Later that night, a blog post was published, exposing Victor and #39's misdeeds and detailing the unethical practices of Clark Enterprises. Ethan had carefully orchestrated it all, ensuring that the right people saw the evidence before the company's reputation was permanently tarnished. After the public exposure, Ethan confronted Sophia once more, this time not with anger, but with a calm resolution. She was still reeling from the collapse of their marriage, but now, she had a choice. She confessed that she was pregnant, though she wasn't sure who the father was, Victor or Ethan. The DNA test confirmed Ethan was not the father. Ethan, drained from the emotional turmoil, filed for divorce, not out of vengeance, but because he knew it was time to move on. He realized that while Sophia had been an important chapter in his life, it was time to close that book and find his own path. In the aftermath of the divorce, Ethan left New York behind. He accepted an offer to work with an innovative startup in Singapore, focusing on sustainable architecture and urban development. With his creative project gaining traction, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. Though his heart still carried the scars of the past, Ethan knew that he had a future waiting for him. As he boarded the plane to Singapore, he realized that while the journey had been painful, it had also been transformative. He had shed his old skin and was ready to embrace whatever the future held, with hope, resilience, and a renewed sense of self. Ethan's arrival in Singapore felt surreal. The vibrant city, full of modern skyscrapers juxtaposed with traditional markets and lush green spaces, provided a stark contrast to the cold, sterile offices of Clark Enterprises back in New York. The scent of spices and the hum of a bustling, diverse city brought a sense of excitement Ethan hadn't felt in a long time. He moved into a minimalist apartment overlooking the Marina Bay, far from the noisy streets he once roamed in search of corporate triumph. Singapore felt like a new beginning, a place where he could reinvigorate his life and escape the memories of his past. Yet, despite the change of scenery, a nagging voice in his head kept questioning whether running away was the solution. Could he truly escape the ghosts of his past? At his new job, Ethan was welcomed with cautious enthusiasm. His reputation as a former CEO and his experience in high-profile projects gave him immediate credibility, but he found that the cultural differences and work ethics in Singapore required a level of adaptability he hadn't anticipated. He was expected to operate in a more collaborative environment, something he hadn't experienced at Clark Enterprises, where decisions were often made unilaterally. Ethan struggled initially. His boss, Mei Ling, a sharp and compassionate leader, encouraged him to embrace the team's collective mindset. "Ethan, here, we believe in growth through collaboration, not competition, she told him during one of their first meetings. This was a world away from the cutthroat environment of his old company, and it made Ethan realize how disconnected he had been from the human side of business for so long. As Ethan settled into his new routine, he continued to nurture his creative side, which had been dormant for years. Isabella's influence had planted a seed, and now, that seed was beginning to grow. He started visiting local art galleries, attending workshops on sustainable architecture, and even took up sculpting in his free time. One of his first projects involved working with local architects to design a sustainable community center in the heart of Singapore's Old Town. The project not only tapped into his long-lost passion for design but also allowed him to use his skills to give back to a community in need. The project's success became a symbol of Ethan's journey from a corporate giant to someone who understood the true value of creativity and purpose. But despite the growing success of his new projects, he couldn't escape the thought that something was still missing. Months passed, and Ethan's life began to take shape. Yet, just as things started to feel like they were falling into place, he received an unexpected phone call, Sophia. Her voice was frail, almost unrecognizable, as she explained that she had left New York after everything unraveled, and she was now in Singapore. She wanted to meet. Ethan felt a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, but also a deep-rooted sense of responsibility. He hadn't heard from her in months, and the timing felt too coincidental. Was she coming to make amends, or was she seeking something from him, closure, reconciliation, or something else? When they met at a cafe by the river, Sophia looked worn down. She was no longer the confident, poised woman she once was. Life had taken its toll on her too, and the weight of their past seemed to have crushed her. She explained that she had been struggling with her own identity, feeling lost without Ethan, without the life they had built together. The affair with Victor had been a mistake, one that she regretted deeply, but she didn't know how to undo the damage. "I don't expect forgiveness," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "But I want you to know I've changed. I'm not the person I was. I never meant to hurt you, Ethan." Ethan sat in silence, unsure of how to respond. He had moved on from her, but the emotions stirred up in this meeting were overwhelming. It wasn't about revenge anymore, but about understanding that people could evolve, even after causing profound harm. They talked for hours, sharing their thoughts and feelings, each trying to make sense of the past while acknowledging that the future was uncertain. At the end of their conversation, Sophia apologized one final time, and Ethan, with a deep breath, told her that he needed to continue moving forward with his life. Sophia left that meeting with a sense of closure, but for Ethan, the emotional storm still lingered. He wasn't ready to forgive her fully, but he knew he had to release the hold she still had on his heart. The journey of healing was ongoing. As Ethan began to find peace in his creative endeavors, something unexpected happened. He received an offer from an old business associate, Victor Blackwood. Victor, now a former executive at Clark Enterprises following the scandal that rocked the company, had set up his own firm specializing in high-end architectural projects for international clients. He wanted Ethan to join his company, offering him a significant salary and the opportunity to lead high-profile ventures. The offer seemed too tempting to ignore, especially with the potential to expand Ethan's vision globally. But Ethan hesitated. The temptation to return to the world he had once dominated was strong, but so were the lessons he had learned in Singapore. Could he truly abandon the work that was giving him fulfillment, his new projects, his creative freedom, and his role in the community? Was it worth trading his newfound sense of peace for the shiny allure of wealth and power? The offer gnawed at Ethan. It wasn't just about the money, it was about identity. Who was he now, and what did he truly want from life? Could he truly leave behind the corporate world for a life of passion-driven work, or was he just hiding from the reality of his failures? Ethan spent nights reflecting on the offer, weighing the pros and cons, and confronting his deepest fears. He knew that he could easily slip back into the old habits of ambition and ego-driven success, but at what cost? Meanwhile, his Sustainable Community Center project began gaining international recognition, and he found himself at the center of a growing movement for socially responsible architecture. The projects he started were slowly taking on a life of their own, and his passion for them kept him grounded. Still, the pull of the corporate world and the financial security it promised remained. Would he return to the grind, chasing bigger paychecks and a higher status, or would he continue down this unpredictable path of self-discovery? As Ethan continued to build his life in Singapore, he knew that the decisions ahead would define his future. Each path was fraught with its own set of risks and rewards. What was truly important to him now? His creative expression? His sense of purpose? Or the lure of returning to a life of success and power? The story, like Ethan's life, was still unfolding, an open road with endless possibilities and challenges. As he looked out over the skyline of Singapore, he knew one thing for sure: the journey was far from over. Despite his growing confidence and involvement in creative projects, life in Singapore wasn't without its challenges. Ethan faced his first major setback when a competitor in the architecture industry, a firm with deep connections to the government, began to challenge the community center project. The firm, led by a ruthless businessman named Harrison Leung, was known for getting their way through political influence and backdoor deals. Ethan's sustainable design, which had been praised for its environmental impact and community focus, was now under attack. Harrison and his team began spreading rumors that the project would be too costly and that it would disrupt the neighborhood's development plans. They had the backing of powerful investors, and it wasn't long before local media started questioning the feasibility of Ethan's design. This challenge hit Ethan harder than he expected. He'd grown accustomed to overcoming obstacles in his career, but this time, it wasn't just about business competition, it was about something more personal. The project wasn't just a professional endeavor, it was a representation of his new identity, of the values he was striving to build his life around. The thought of losing it felt like losing himself. He turned to Isabella for support. She was now deeply involved in his work, offering her creative insights and helping him navigate the complexity of local politics. They spent long nights together, working to come up with a strategy that would allow them to fight back and prove the viability of the project. "We can't let them dictate our narrative, Ethan," Isabella said one night as they sat in his apartment, papers and blueprints scattered around them. "This project represents more than just buildings. It represents hope. We can't let them steal that." Her words stuck with him. He knew she was right. It wasn't just about architecture, it was about something larger than himself. As the weeks passed, the tension between Ethan's team and Harrison and #39s grew. The local community, however, began to rally around Ethan's project. Local influencers, environmental activists, and even artists supported the initiative, creating a grassroots movement to defend it. Ethan's team also began to attract more attention internationally, with several NGOs reaching out to help fund the project. In a bold move, Ethan decided to take his case directly to the public. He organized a live-streamed town hall meeting, inviting all stakeholders, government officials, local businesses, citizens, and activists, to hear firsthand about the benefits of his design. He wanted to present the project as not just an architectural feat, but a catalyst for community growth, sustainability, and social equality. During the meeting, Ethan spoke passionately about the future of the city and how it was crucial to prioritize the well-being of its people over short-term profits. He spoke of the need for buildings that fostered connection, environmental consciousness, and long-term sustainability. His sincerity and conviction moved many in the audience, and the event quickly gained traction online. At the same time, Ethan revealed a key piece of evidence, documents showing that Harrison's firm had been involved in unethical land dealings with powerful corporate interests. The information, which had been collected by his private investigator, was enough to discredit Harrison's claims and forced the government to re-evaluate their support for the competing design. The tide was turning. Amid the chaos of the project's battle, Ethan and Isabella grew closer. What had started as a professional partnership blossomed into a deep, supportive friendship, and over time, a romance began to develop between them. They shared late-night conversations about their dreams, their pasts, and their hopes for the future. Both had been through the trials of life, and together, they found solace in each other's presence. Isabella had also been through her own struggles. She confided in Ethan that she'd spent much of her life questioning whether her creative work had any real meaning. Coming from a family of doctors, she had always been encouraged to pursue a practical career. But she had chosen art and design, a decision that often left her feeling isolated. Ethan's courage to take risks and rebuild his life inspired her to believe that they could both make a difference, together. The growing connection between them felt like the start of something new, something beautiful. However, despite their blossoming relationship, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was still not fully in control of his future. Every decision felt like a step into the unknown. Just as Ethan thought things were starting to settle, Victor Blackwood unexpectedly showed up in Singapore. The last time they had spoken was when Victor's affair with Sophia had led to the downfall of Ethan's marriage. After his public disgrace, Victor had disappeared from the industry for a while, seemingly in hiding. Ethan was surprised to see Victor sitting across from him in a trendy cafe one afternoon. He had lost his sharp suit and polished demeanor, replaced by a more rugged, disheveled look. "I heard about your project," Victor began, his voice low. "Impressive work. You've made quite a name for yourself, Ethan." Ethan wasn't sure how to react. He had moved on from Victor, but the sight of his former rival, once a trusted protégé, stirred old resentments. Yet, he couldn't help but feel a bit of sympathy for Victor. He had fallen far from grace, and it seemed he was searching for redemption in his own way. Victor explained that he had been trying to get back into the architecture world after the scandal, but his reputation had been permanently damaged. The door to success that once seemed wide open had slammed shut. "I know what I did was wrong," Victor admitted, his eyes looking down. "I betrayed you, and I'll never forgive myself for it. But I've changed. And I need your help. There's an opportunity in the industry. I need your expertise to make it happen." Ethan was taken aback. He had no interest in helping the man who had torn apart his life, but he couldn't ignore the change in Victor's demeanor. For the first time, Victor seemed genuine, vulnerable, even. "You really think I'm going to help you?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I need guidance," Victor said. "I know I was wrong, but I want to rebuild, and I think I could help you in ways no one else can." Ethan looked at him, the weight of their shared history heavy in the air. He didn't know if he could ever fully forgive Victor for what he had done, but he also realized that his life had moved beyond the bitterness. He wasn't the same person he was when he left New York, and he didn't have to be defined by the past. "I'll think about it," Ethan said, standing up and walking away, leaving Victor sitting at the table, alone with his regrets. Ethan's journey continued. The community center project was finally approved, and construction was underway. The city of Singapore would soon have a place for its residents to come together, to learn, and to grow, something that Ethan had worked tirelessly to create. As he stood on the construction site, watching workers and volunteers collaborate to build the space, Ethan felt a sense of pride and fulfillment he hadn't known in years. This was his true legacy, creating something lasting, something that gave back to the community. But his life wasn't defined by one project or even one success. The questions about his future remained, and the unresolved conflicts with people like Victor and Sophia still lingered. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Ethan stood there, watching the skyline of Singapore stretch before him. His heart was full, but his journey was far from over. The road ahead was still uncertain, but it was his to navigate, one step at a time. With the community center project now progressing smoothly, Ethan found himself with a newfound sense of purpose. The project had garnered significant attention, not just for its innovative design, but also for its impact on the local community. It was a symbol of change, of what could be achieved when personal passion aligned with public good. Yet, Ethan knew that his journey was far from complete. The question still loomed in his mind: what was next? One evening, as he sat alone in his office overlooking the Singapore skyline, Ethan reflected on how much his life had changed since his arrival. He had moved from a man driven by corporate ambition to someone who now saw value in connection, community, and creating lasting change. The idea of continuing his work in Singapore was tempting, but something deep inside him told him that he couldn't remain static. There was a bigger world out there, and perhaps it was time to broaden his horizons even further. As he mulled over the idea, his phone rang. It was a message from Isabella: "There's something I need to show you. Meet me at the new project site." Ethan's curiosity piqued. He immediately left his apartment and headed to the site. When he arrived, Isabella was standing at the entrance, her arms crossed and a determined look on her face. "I've been thinking a lot, Ethan," she began, leading him into the half-built structure. "About us, about this project, about the future." She paused, taking in the vast space. The unfinished structure echoed their shared dream, a dream that had come to life through their collective efforts. "I think this community center needs to be just the beginning," Isabella continued. "We have something here, something unique. We could expand, create a movement of sustainable, community-driven projects across Asia, maybe even the world." Ethan was struck by the intensity in her voice. She was right. The potential was immense. What if they could take this project global? Could they inspire others to rethink what architecture could be, not just buildings, but spaces that foster connection, creativity, and social good? Isabella's eyes softened as she looked at him. "I want you by my side for this, Ethan. We've built something incredible here, but we can do more. Together." Ethan thought about it for a moment. He had already poured so much of himself into this project, into the people and the mission behind it. Could he leave it behind to venture into something even bigger? Would that be the next step in his journey, or would he risk losing everything they had built? "I'm in," he finally said. "Let's take this further." They both stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of their decision. It felt right. There was no turning back, but it wasn't about turning back anymore. It was about moving forward, into the unknown, armed with hope, passion, and a vision to change the world one community at a time. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan and Isabella worked tirelessly, developing a plan to expand their initiative, researching global markets, and reaching out to potential collaborators. They had a vision to create a sustainable network of community-focused spaces, but they knew it would take more than just local influence to make it a reality. They needed backing, financial, institutional, and political. Just as they were beginning to make headway, Ethan received an unexpected call from a prestigious international organization, the Global Architecture and Urban Development Conference. They wanted Ethan to deliver the keynote speech at their annual conference in Paris, an event that attracted some of the brightest minds in the industry. The invitation was a game-changer. Being selected as a keynote speaker meant he would be thrust into the spotlight, and this could open doors to the global partnerships they desperately needed. The thought of speaking on such a prominent stage made Ethan both excited and apprehensive. "I know it's a huge opportunity, but do you really think we're ready for this?" Ethan asked Isabella one evening, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Isabella, ever confident, smiled. "We've been ready for this for a long time. It's our moment, Ethan." But despite her confidence, Ethan could feel the weight of the responsibility. This wasn't just about delivering a speech, it was about presenting his vision to the world and convincing others that the work he and Isabella had begun in Singapore could be replicated globally. He would be representing not just himself, but the movement they had started. The day of the conference arrived, and Ethan stood before a packed room in Paris. The grandeur of the venue was overwhelming, but he felt an unfamiliar sense of calm. This was his moment to share his message, a message of sustainable, socially conscious architecture that didn't just create buildings, but built communities. As he spoke, his words flowed with ease. He told the audience about the importance of designing spaces that brought people together, spaces that supported environmental sustainability, economic equity, and social well-being. He spoke of the need for a new paradigm in architecture, one that went beyond aesthetics and profit to prioritize people and the planet. The reception was overwhelmingly positive. By the end of the speech, several influential figures in the global architecture community approached Ethan to discuss partnerships, funding, and future projects. Isabella, who had been in the audience, gave him an encouraging nod. The world was listening, and their dream was beginning to take shape on a scale they had never imagined. After the conference, Ethan and Isabella were riding high on success, the momentum of their vision gaining strength with every new partnership. They were preparing for the next big step, expanding into new markets across Asia and Europe, when the phone rang. It was Victor. "I need to talk to you, Ethan." Victor's voice was low, almost apologetic. "There's something going on, something I can't ignore. I need your help." Ethan had grown used to Victor's unpredictability, but this sounded different. With a sigh, he agreed to meet him. When they sat down in a quiet cafe, Victor wasted no time. "I've been trying to get back into the industry, Ethan. But someone's been undermining me. They've been spreading lies about me, sabotaging my reputation even more than before. I don't know who to trust anymore." Ethan listened carefully, watching as Victor's usual arrogance was replaced with genuine concern. "Who's behind this?" Ethan asked. Victor's eyes shifted. "It's Harrison Leung. He's involved in some shady dealings, Ethan. He's been working behind the scenes to take over my firm and destroy my projects. I have proof." Ethan frowned, realizing that the man who had once caused him so much pain was still a formidable enemy. Harrison's influence had already been a threat to Ethan's work in Singapore, and now it appeared that he was targeting Victor as well. "Why come to me, Victor?" Ethan asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "Because," Victor said, his voice strained, "I can't do this alone. I need someone who knows how to fight back. I've seen how you've rebuilt yourself, how you've fought for what you believe in. I need your help to expose Harrison and his network." Ethan didn't answer right away. His mind raced. Victor had betrayed him once before, but now he seemed to be offering something different. It was a complicated decision. Could he trust Victor again, or would this be another manipulation? "Let me think about it," Ethan finally said, standing up. "But don't mistake this for an offer of friendship. I'm not in the business of saving people who've hurt me." Victor nodded, understanding. As Ethan walked away, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision, he couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of a new chapter, or was it simply another complication in a life that seemed never to stop throwing curveballs his way? Ethan stood at another crossroads in his life, torn between his past and his future. His work with Isabella, the vision of sustainable, community-focused architecture, was flourishing. But Victor's reappearance, and the looming threat of Harrison Leung, threatened to pull him back into a world he had long tried to escape. Was he ready to help Victor and risk reopening old wounds, or was it time to fully sever ties with his past once and for all? Would helping Victor be a step towards redemption, or a path to more betrayal? As Ethan looked ahead, he knew one thing for certain: whatever choice he made, it would shape not just his future, but the future of everything he had built. Ethan sat alone in his apartment, staring at the skyline of Singapore. His phone buzzed, a reminder of the tension that was slowly consuming him. Victor's plea for help was still ringing in his ears. Harrison Leung's shadow loomed large over everything he had worked so hard to build. The choice between protecting his past or fully embracing his future seemed impossible. But deep down, Ethan knew that whatever decision he made now would shape the rest of his life. After days of contemplation, he called Isabella. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of his internal battle. They met at the construction site of the community center, the place that had started it all. The skeletal structure stood tall in front of them, symbolic of both the progress they had made and the challenges that still lay ahead. "Ethan, what's going on?" Isabella asked, concern filling her voice. I've been thinking about Victor, Ethan began. He came to me with a request. He needs help exposing Harrison Leung, the same person who tried to ruin my life in New York. The man who's been behind everything, both the competition and the sabotage. I'm not sure what to do. Isabella listened intently, processing his words. After a long pause, she spoke. You've come so far, Ethan. You've built something incredible here, something that can change the world. Do you really want to let someone like Harrison back into your life? Do you want to risk losing everything for a past that no longer defines you? Ethan's eyes narrowed, uncertainty creeping back in. What if helping Victor means finally taking down Harrison? What if it's the only way to truly move on and keep my work safe? Isabella walked closer to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. You can't let the past control you. Harrison Leung is a symbol of everything you've left behind. If you confront him, it should be for the right reasons, not because of a need for revenge, but to protect the future you've worked for. But if you're doing it for Victor, or out of some need for closure, you're still living in the past. Her words struck a chord deep within him. Ethan realized that she was right. He had come so far, he had reinvented himself, rebuilt his life, and found a new purpose. He couldn't allow himself to get tangled up in the bitterness of his old life again. His future was not defined by the actions of people like Harrison or Victor. I'm done with the past, Ethan said, a sense of clarity washing over him. I've made my decision. Ethan contacted Victor the next day, calling him to meet in a neutral location, a small cafe in the heart of the city. When they sat down, Victor immediately started speaking. I knew you'd come around, Victor said, his voice hopeful, but there was a hint of desperation behind his words. This could be our chance to finally end Harrison's reign over this industry. I can't do it alone. Together, we can expose him. Ethan met his gaze, his expression cold but resolute. I've made my decision, Victor. I'm not going after Harrison for you. I'm not going to risk everything I've built. If you want to fight him, you do it on your own. Victor's face fell, disbelief flickering in his eyes. You're choosing your precious project over me? I'm choosing my future, Ethan replied calmly. And that doesn't involve fighting a battle that isn't mine anymore. Victor's shoulders slumped, the weight of Ethan's words hitting him harder than he'd expected. Ethan stood up, leaving a stunned Victor at the table. As he walked away, he felt a sense of relief, knowing that he had finally put his past to rest. In the months that followed, Ethan's decision began to pay off. The community center in Singapore was completed ahead of schedule, and the impact it had on the local community was undeniable. The center became a hub for creativity, innovation, and social change, with a steady stream of visitors from all over the world coming to witness its success. The project was now a symbol of what could be accomplished when passion, sustainability, and collaboration were put first. But Ethan didn't stop there. He and Isabella launched a global initiative to replicate their model in other cities. They worked with governments, local communities, and architects worldwide to create spaces that didn't just serve people's needs but fostered connection, creativity, and environmental responsibility. Their vision was becoming a reality on an international scale. Ethan's reputation as a visionary architect and social entrepreneur spread far and wide. The once ambitious man focused on corporate success had become a leader in the movement for sustainable, community-driven design. As he stood before a gathering of global leaders at the opening of a new project in Berlin, Ethan realized that he had truly found his calling. His personal life also flourished. His relationship with Isabella grew stronger with every passing day. They continued to support each other in their shared vision, and what started as a professional partnership had blossomed into a deep, meaningful love. Together, they were changing the world, one community at a time. A year later, Ethan stood at the top of a skyscraper overlooking the city of Singapore. The community center, now a beacon of hope, stood in the distance. It was a reminder of everything he had accomplished and the journey that had led him here. He was no longer the man who had once been consumed by corporate ambition or the pain of betrayal. He had found something far more valuable: purpose, connection, and the freedom to build a life that reflected his true values. Isabella joined him at the railing, her hand slipping into his. "It's amazing, isn't it? How far we've come." Ethan smiled, his heart full. "It is. And this is just the beginning." As they looked out over the city, the horizon stretched infinitely before them, full of promise and possibility. Ethan knew that no matter where his journey took him, he was finally on the right path. The past was behind him, and the future was full of hope. And so, Ethan's journey comes full circle, from a man lost in his own ambitions to someone who's found purpose, love, and a path forward. But as with all stories, this is just the beginning. What will Ethan face next? And how will his story continue to unfold as he steps into a new chapter of his life? Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure: his future is brighter than ever before. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think Ethan should do next? How would you handle the challenges he faced? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed Ethan's story and want to see what happens next, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss an update. Be part of the journey as we explore more stories of transformation and triumph. Thank you for watching, and we can't wait to share more of this adventure with you. See you in the next video.